This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House. The long winter chill is over.
There is no greater supporter of the Jewish people and the Jewish state than President Donald Trump.
We'll have analysis of the meeting and what it means for the Middle East. Plus, a look inside the settlement issue and how one ministry is helping victims of the Syrian civil war. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. For the first time since U.S. President Trump took office, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came to the White House. It marked a dramatic shift from the previous 8 years.
Thank you. Again, thank you.
A rekindled friendship chased away any winter chill at the White House Wednesday. After years of tension with the Obama administration, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sees President Trump as a key partner.
I've known the president and I've known his family and his team for a long time. And there is no greater supporter of the Jewish people and the Jewish state than President Donald Trump.
But there are key issues to work through, starting with how to achieve peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
As with any successful negotiation, both sides will have to make compromises. You know that, right?
In comments that would no doubt anger Palestinian leaders, Trump said a two-state solution isn't a requirement for peace.
So I'm looking at two-state and one state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one.
Netanyahu maintains Palestinians must recognize Israel's right to exist before any peace plan can move forward.
You have to ask yourself, why are Jews called Jews? Well, the Chinese are called Chinese because they come from China. The Japanese are called Japanese because they come from Japan. Well, Jews are called Jews because they come from Judea. This is our ancestral homeland. Jews are not foreign colonialists in Judea.
The other thorny issue is on so-called settlements. In the West Bank, Netanyahu has pushed forward, but the White House says that may not be the best move for a peace deal. It's a topic CBN News asked about at their joint news conference.
On the settlement issue, are you both on the same page? How do you exactly term that as it relates to the settlement issue?
As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made.
Let's try it.
Doesn't sound too optimistic, but that's he's a good negotiator.
That's the art of the deal.
It also provided the president his first opportunity to address the controversy concerning fired National Security Advisor Mike Flynn. He didn't address the timetable of what he knew about his campaign advisors talking with Russian officials. Instead, he blamed the media.
I think he's been treated very, very unfairly by the media, as I call it, the fake media in many cases. And I think it's really a sad thing that he was treated so badly. I think in addition to that, from intelligence, papers are being leaked, things are being leaked. It's criminal action, criminal act, and it's been going on for a long time before me, but now it's really going on.
The key question remains whether the Trump administration can begin to plug these leaks so he can move forward with his agenda. David Brody, CBN News.
Joining me to talk more about the Trump-Netanyahu meeting is from our Washington, D.C. bureau is John Waggy, CBN senior editor. And here in our Jerusalem bureau, Julie Stahl, our Middle East correspondent. John, I'll start with you. What was your big takeaway from yesterday's press conference with Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump?
Well, Chris, I think really it does feel like a new era, certainly. You could tell by the body language, you could tell by a lot of different ways, the camaraderie that flowed between the two leaders, and they have some substantive new ideas. You know, one of the things, though, that's going to be interesting, because I had noticed that in Jerusalem, the headlines were all about the possible end of the two-state solution and how the two leaders seem to get along so well and all those kind of things. And the headlines here in Washington were about all of Trump's problems with his fellow Republicans, with the national security apparatus, and also with the media. And so he's got a lot of work to do just to get to the Middle East again. He's got a lot of things to work out here politically just to get his feet on the ground here in Washington. The opposition is in full cry here.
It does seem like an administration in siege, but as you say, the optics yesterday were a big change from what happened with Netanyahu and Obama for the last 8 years. Julie, to you, what would you say the Israeli and the Palestinian reaction was to yesterday's press conference?
Well, it was definitely a very hospitable press conference for the Israelis. I think the reaction here is probably a little bit mixed. On the right, they're pretty happy with Netanyahu. He was actually given a lot of freedom, although I think the settlement issue kind of threw him a little bit for a loop.
Yeah, and I understand you had a conversation with Saeb Erekat, the chief negotiator for the PLO.
Yes, I did. I spoke with him this morning, and he couldn't say disaster enough times. And he kept saying, if this is the end of the two-state solution, then it'll be a disaster for Israelis and Palestinians. I asked him, well, would you recognize Israel as a Jewish state? And he said, we've already recognized Israel. He avoided the whole Jewish issue completely.
John, it looks like the Palestinians seem to be out of the deal, so to speak. Mr. Trump, President Trump, the man of the art of the deal, seems to be having a new paradigm in the Middle East. Rather than just negotiating Israeli-Palestinians, he seems to be making it a regional issue. What did you think of that?
Well, I think absolutely that's what he's done. That's exactly what he's done. There is a new kind of shape of things in the Arab world, and this is something that both Trump and Netanyahu referred to in their meeting as a sign of real hope that something can be arranged. It does seem to leave the Palestinians out in the cold to some extent. It'll be interesting to see how within the Arab world they have a give and take that will present one negotiating side. That could be a real issue in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, I would think so too. And it seems like what's drawing Israel and these Sunni Arab nations together is their common enemy, Iran. Julie, how important is the Iran issue to Israel?
Well, it's very, very important. They've said on their missiles, as the Prime Minister said last night, it's written, death to Iran, death to Israel on their missiles. So Iran really is a threat.
Julie, what's this idea behind the nuclear deal? I mean, I understand Netanyahu is saying they're not only wanting to make one nuclear weapon, they want to make maybe 200, 100 nuclear weapons. And also he was saying, he was making the point, wasn't he, that this is not just a threat to Israel, but the U.S. as well.
That's right. Intercontinental ballistic missiles will be able to reach the United States. They're not for Israel. So nuclear Iran will be a threat not just to Israel, but to the region and the U.S., the whole world.
John, a final question to you. Iran poses a threat to Israel, the region, and the U.S. How do you think believers, Christians, should be praying for this new era that we're just getting into?
Well, I heard a lot of talk in the meeting this week about the art of the deal and deal making and all that kind of thing. Christians, I believe, all who believe in the words of the Bible need to realize that the Bible has a lot to say about the biblical borders and about what the Lord's plans are for this land. And we're enjoined to pray in the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so we want the Lord's plans to be established here. And it can be, when you get caught up in political battles and all that kind of thing, you might want one side to win over the other, and deals sound really good. But the important thing is that the Lord's plans and purposes be established for the Middle East. I think that's the key and a real point of prayer, in addition to the one we always have from the Bible, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Thanks, John. That's a great perspective. So thanks, John, from Washington, D.C. Glad to see you there, and Julie here in Jerusalem. And this is going to be such a big issue that we'll be reporting on months and years to come. Up next, a one-on-one interview with Israel's Deputy Minister of Public Diplomacy, Ambassador Michael Oren. Ambassador Michael Oren serves as Israel's Deputy Minister of Public Diplomacy and served as Israel's ambassador to the United States. We sat down with Oren and asked about a number of issues, from the two-state solution to the current status of the Jewish state. Ambassador Oren, thanks for joining us on CBN News.
It's always wonderful to be with you.
You were Israeli ambassador to the United States when President Obama was president. What changes do you see right now, even in the last few weeks with the Trump administration?
Well, the Obama administration back in 2009, when I came into office, I was almost the same time he did, changed some of the fundamental, let's say, pillars of the U.S.'s relationship. One was no daylight. No daylight meant simply that if we were going to have disagreements with one another, the United States and Israel, and we are sovereign countries, we will have disagreements, that the two countries would do their utmost to keep those disagreements discreet, behind closed doors, not to conduct those disagreements publicly, and the Obama administration made a concerted decision to conduct these differences publicly. The other major pillar was that was discarded by Obama was the pillar of no surprises. And that pillar simply held that if the United States or Israel were going to make a major policy move or declaration, that the other side would get warning, they get a chance to react. Starting with the Cairo speech in 2009, Obama gave a very, very long speech that dealt with all of our primary issues, both on the peace process and Iran, and we had no consultation. So the hope will be that Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump will restore these pillars.
What changes do you see now in the Middle East because of President Trump being the leader now, leader of the free world?
One is the hope that he will stand up to Iran. Remember, especially in the period after the signing of the Iran nuclear deal, the United States simply backed off from every Iranian provocation, whether it was taking U.S. sailors hostage, or holding American journalists in jail, or testing ballistic missiles. The United States did nothing. I think that message has to get across the entire region that that era has ended. In the sense that the United States stands foursquare with Israel. And if anything I've learned in diplomacy is that an American leader does not get credit in the Middle East for picking a fight with Israel. He gets just the opposite. He gets contempt, because in the Middle East, people respect those who stand by their friends. Period.
The Prime Minister is under a lot of pressure from a lot of different sides, and one of that is abrogating the two-state solution, annexing part of the West Bank, Judea, Samaria. What are the pressures he's facing, and how is he doing?
I think you said it very well. He's under pressures from a large part of his coalition, even a large part of his party. No longer accepts the formula of two states for two peoples. About 150,000 Palestinians from their West Bank enter Israel every single day. About 100,000 of them actually work in Israel. And that is a good thing. So here is an example of a type of coexistence which nobody focuses on. And I think we can build on this. We can improve it.
What you're talking about your new position. What is your new position, and what are you doing with that?
My new position is strengthening and building Israel's foreign relations at a unique and special juncture in Israel's foreign relations. So when I was a very young man, we didn't have peace with Egypt. We didn't have peace with Jordan. Today, not only do we have peace with Egypt and Jordan, we have excellent relations with China. Our trade with China goes up about 30% every year. India is one of our closest allies in the world. The Indian president was here this year. The prime minister is coming shortly. Russia, good relations with Russia. Some of our best relations with Europe are with the former Soviet bloc countries. All the African countries cut off relations with Israel because of the Arab oil boycott. Today, they're all standing in line to renew relations with us. Our relationship with the Sunni Arab states, the states of the Arab Gulf area, have never been better. And it's happening in Latin America too. So there's so much work to be done that we have several officials dealing with it. I'm one of them.
Yeah, what do you attribute this? What's happened to Israel in 50, 70 years?
Our people. We have, over the course of the last 4,000 years, learned to be very adept at grappling with challenges, surviving and thriving. It's something we do best, and it begs a deeper question: why is that? And I think you'll sympathize with this. It's related to our tradition and our faith.
Ambassador Oren, appreciate your help and your time. Thank you.
Always like to be with you.
Coming up, we take a deeper look into the issue of Jewish settlements in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. In late December 2016, the UN Security Council declared the area known as the West Bank occupied Palestinian territory. But do the Jewish people have their own claim to the land, known in the Bible as Judea and Samaria? Here's CBN News Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl.
More than 400,000 Israelis live in Judea and Samaria, an area much of the world calls the West Bank or occupied territories. Israel argues the land is not occupied, but disputed because it was never a modern country and its status has never been resolved. In 1967, Israel took back this area known as the Biblical Heartland in the Six-Day War.
It wasn't just about a victory in a war. This was a return to our roots.
This is the modern-day community of Beit El. Established in 1977, it's home to some 6,500 Israelis. It's in the same area and named after its biblical ancestor Beit El, also known as Bethel, the house of God. 4,000 years ago, the Bible says Jacob dreamed of a ladder to heaven, and God appeared to him and promised him the land of Israel to him and his descendants. Settling the land wasn't easy. It was barren and rocky. Initially, the government didn't approve, but Israelis from all sides of the political and religious spectrum supported the idea.
And I believe then almost the entire population of Israel was with us.
The first settlement was Kfar Etzion, first established in 1927, some 20 years before the State of Israel. Arabs destroyed Kfar Etzion 3 times over the years. The 1948 siege led to the evacuation of women and children and an eventual massacre of the fighters left behind. The young evacuees, like Jerry Katz, never lost the hope they would one day return. The government allowed them to do so in 1967.
As little children, we said that we're going to return. Like little children repeat stories all the time to make it, maybe they think it's going to become true, and they repeat it. But this time, it really did become true.
Even with this history, the settlements remain under attack. While some of the communities are isolated, others are much closer to sometimes hostile Arab villages and cities. Some are small, others have thousands or tens of thousands of residents, commercial centers, schools, and swimming pools. If Israel gave up this land, especially Samaria, it would be just 9 miles wide in some places. Military experts say the Jewish state would be indefensible.
It's not the settlements that are stumbling block for the peoples of the world. It's the establishment of the settlement of a Jewish state in the Middle East that is a stumbling block in the eyes of the nations of the world.
Many supporters point out that almost all Israeli settlements are built on state, not private land, and there is confusion when Palestinians claim sovereignty there.
It's very important to understand that the personal property ownership rights of the Arabs have been completely respected. But we don't agree that they have sovereign rights to this land.
At one time, many Israelis were ready to give up the land in return for the promise of peace. Now, after Israel uprooted 21 Jewish communities in the Gaza Strip and 4 in the northern West Bank in the 2005 disengagement, they've changed their minds.
The wake-up call has sent a message to all Israelis that the settlements are not the root cause of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and certainly not an obstacle for peace. The message to the terrorists has been that not only is terrorism paid off, but in fact you get more and more recognition by the international community.
Although the United States has had a long-standing policy against settlements, Israel believes that may be changing under President Trump. Years ago, Trump even gave a donation to Beit El. And while much of the world is still pushing Israel to give up its biblical heartland, those who live there hope they can continue reclaiming their biblical heritage. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Judea and Samaria.
Up next, see how a Christian ministry came to the aid of one Syrian family in crisis. The Syrian civil war has devastated millions of families. Many of them sought refuge in neighboring countries like Lebanon. Here's a story of how a Christian organization brought hope and help to one of those families.
Hamra's family was forced to flee the war in Syria when a bomb destroyed their home.
It has been very difficult here, and my husband works very hard. He can't get a better job because the government won't allow the refugees to find legitimate work. But we still need money to feed ourselves.
Hamra and her husband invited me into their makeshift tent and told me about their lives before the war.
We had a beautiful home in Syria, and I farmed my own land with many goats. Now I work in our landlord's field, just making enough to pay the rent.
When CBN's Orphans Promise and Heart for Lebanon found out about the family's situation, first we invited them to our food distribution.
Each one of these bundles has enough rice, canned meat, beans, and household goods to last a family of up to 8 for an entire month.
Now Hamra's daughter and son are going to the Hope Center, which is also supported by Orphans Promise. Here, they and other Syrian refugee children are learning English, Arabic, and math.
I love going to school so much. The teachers are amazing and really care for us. We weren't able to go to school when we first came to Lebanon, and I really missed it. But now we go to the Hope Center, and it's a lot of fun.
I'm so happy that they are getting a good education. They come home after school, and I make them a meal from the food we're given. I can see their smiles and how happy they are. That means everything to me.
At the Hope Center, we openly teach children about Jesus Christ and show them Superbook in Arabic.
I love Superbook and the stories about Jesus. I know that if we pray to Jesus, He will take our burdens. I prayed for my grandmother who was very sick in the hospital, and now she is completely healed.
Orphans Promise and Heart for Lebanon also installed a fresh water system for Hamra's family, so they never have to worry about finding clean drinking water.
We are so grateful that you are supporting us with the food and water, and I'm excited about what my children are learning at your school.
I want to thank Christians a lot for their prayers and for providing for our needs. May God bless you and protect your families.
I want to tell all the people who are helping us that I love you. I love Heart for Lebanon and Orphans Promise so much, and I want to thank them for doing their best to take care of us.
Orphans Promise does good to many families like Hamra's here in the Middle East and around the world. That's all for this edition. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please share us on your social networks. And if you'd like to know more about what's happening in the Middle East, pick up a copy of my book, ISIS, Iran, and Israel: What You Need to Know About the Current Mideast Crisis and the Coming Mideast War. You can find it on Amazon.com. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.